Hello, my friend. Today, I want to tell you a powerful and inspiring story. It's the story of a man who spent 27 years in prison but came out not with hate, but with hope. A man who helped unite a broken country. A man who taught the world that peace is stronger than war and love is stronger than hate. His name was Nelson Mandela. Maybe you've heard his name before, but do you know what he really did? Do you know how he changed South Africa and the world? This story is not just history. It's full of life, pain, courage, and strength. And I will tell it in simple English so you can learn and be inspired at the same time. Imagine this. You are taken away from your family, your children, and your home. You are locked in a small prison for many, many years. You can't see your children grow up. You can't walk outside. Most people would become angry or give up. But Mandela didn't. He stayed strong. He read books. He wrote. He thought deeply. And when he came out, he forgave the people who put him in jail. Yes, he forgave them. Why? Because he didn't want more hate. He wanted peace. And because of that, he became the first black president of South Africa. This story is not only about politics. It's about never giving up. It's about fighting for what is right. It's about the power of forgiveness. Nelson Mandela's life is full of lessons for all of us. And if you're learning English, this is also a great chance to learn real words, real history, and real emotion. So, my friend, sit back and listen carefully. You are about to learn how one man stood against injustice and won, not with violence, but with peace. And in the end, I'll ask you, what would you do if you were in Mandela's place? Think about it. Now, let's go to the beginning of his life, to a small village in South Africa where a boy named Ralilela was born before the world knew him as Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was not always called Nelson. He was born on July 18th, 1918, in a small village called Mvizo in South Africa. His real name at birth was Ralilela, a word in his Xhosa language that means pulling the branch of a tree, or more simply, troublemaker. Ralilela was born in a time when South Africa was ruled by white people. The black people, like his family, had very few rights. They could not vote, they had to live in poor areas, and they were treated unfairly. But little Ralilela did not know all of this yet. He was just a boy running in the fields, playing with friends, and listening to stories from the elders at night. His father, Gadla Henry Mfakanyiswa, was a local chief and a respected man in the village. He taught his son about African traditions, honor, and leadership. But when Ralilela was still young, his father died. After that, his life changed. He was sent to live with a powerful chief named John Jintaba, who was a family friend and a leader of the Thembu people. This new home was different. It had more rules. Ralilela had to wear proper clothes, speak politely, and learn how to act like a future leader. He also began to go to school. At his first school, a teacher gave him the name Nelson. It was a custom at the time for African children to be given English names by teachers. And from that day, he became Nelson Mandela. As a student, Mandela was smart and curious. He loved to read. He asked many questions. And even though he came from a simple village, he dreamed of big things that he saw the world around him. He saw how black people were treated. And deep in his heart, he knew something was wrong. But he was still just a boy, learning, watching, and waiting. Mandela loved African history. He listened to old stories about brave warriors and wise kings. He began to believe that one day, he too could do something important. He didn't know it yet, but this belief would grow stronger every year. By the time he was a teenager, Mandela was not just a village boy anymore. He had big ideas, strong values, and a deep love for justice. This was just the beginning of a long, difficult, and powerful journey. A journey that would take him far from his village and change the world forever. As Mandela grew older, his dreams grew bigger. He went to Heldtown, a respected high school for black students. There, he learned more about the world and about injustice. His teachers taught British history and ideas like freedom and equality. But outside the classroom, black people had no freedom at all. This made Mandela think deeply. After high school, Mandela started studying at the University of Fort Hare. It was one of the few universities in South Africa that accepted black students. He hoped to become a lawyer one day, but something happened that changed his life. At Fort Hare, the students held an election for the student council. The school wanted Mandela to join the council, but he didn't agree with how the election was done. He believed it was not fair. So, he refused to take the position. The school didn't like this. Mandela was told to leave. When he returned home, Chief John Jintaba was not happy. He wanted Mandela to stop being rebellious and to marry a woman the chief had chosen. But Mandela didn't want to marry someone he didn't love. So, at the age of 22, he made a big decision. He ran away to Johannesburg. Johannesburg was a big city with tall buildings, busy streets, and many different people. Life was hard there. Mandela worked as a guard, then as a clerk in a law office. But most importantly, he saw how badly black people were treated. They had to carry special ID cards. They could not live in certain places. They had no voice. This made Mandela angry, but also focused. In Johannesburg, he met people who wanted change. He joined the African National Congress, ANC, a group fighting for the rights of black South Africans. At first, the ANC used peaceful protests. They gave speeches, wrote letters, and tried to speak with the government. But the government didn't listen. Instead, it created a system called apartheid. Under apartheid, black people and white people were completely separated. Black people couldn't vote. They couldn't go to the same schools, hospitals, or even bathrooms. It was unfair. It was cruel. And Mandela decided to fight it. He went back to school and finished his law degree. Then he opened South Africa's first black law firm with his friend, Oliver Tambo. They helped people who were treated unfairly by the law. But Mandela was not just a lawyer. He was becoming a leader, a strong voice, a symbol of resistance. And the government began to notice him. This young man from a small village was now standing up to a powerful system. And he was not afraid. His fight was just beginning. In the 1950s, Nelson Mandela became one of the most important leaders in the African National Congress, ANC. He believed in justice, equal rights, and freedom for all people, no matter their skin color. But the government did not want change. It wanted to keep the system of apartheid strong. Apartheid was getting worse. Black people could not vote. They had to live in separate towns called townships. They could not walk freely without a passbook. The police often beat them or put them in jail for no reason. Mandela saw this and knew peaceful protest was not enough anymore. He started working with a new group inside the ANC called the ANC Youth League. These were young leaders who wanted action. Mandela helped organize strikes, marches, and boycotts. But the government pushed back hard. Many protesters were arrested. Some were killed. In 1952, Mandela and others started the Defiance Campaign. Thousands of black South Africans broke the unfair laws. They went into whites-only areas. They refused to carry passbooks. They knew they would be arrested, but they wanted the world to see the truth. Mandela was arrested, too. He was banned from speaking to the public. He couldn't leave Johannesburg without permission. But he didn't stop. He continued the fight, quietly and carefully. In 1955, A group of leaders from many races met in secret and wrote the Freedom Charter. It was a powerful document. It said, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. This was dangerous for the government. They said it was treason. So in 1956, Mandela and 155 others were arrested and put on trial for treason. The trial lasted for years. In the end, they were found not guilty. But the government was still watching Mandela closely. As time passed, Mandela realized something. Peaceful protests were not working. The government only responded with violence. So Mandela made a very difficult choice. In 1961, he helped start a secret group called Umkhonto we Sizwe, which means Spear of the Nation. This group used sabotage. They damaged buildings, cut telephone lines, and set fires to government property. They never hurt people, but they wanted the government to feel the pressure. Mandela went underground. He wore disguises and moved from place to place. He became known as the Black Pimpernel because nobody could catch him. He even left the country secretly to get help from other African nations. But in 1962, his luck ran out. The police caught him. He was arrested and sent to prison. At first, they only charged him with leaving the country illegally. But later, they found documents that showed his role in Umkhonto we Sizwe. In 1964, Mandela and other ANC leaders were put on trial again, this time for sabotage and trying to overthrow the government. Everyone expected them to say sorry and ask for mercy. But Mandela stood up in court and gave a long, brave speech. He said, I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society. It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die. The court did not give him the death sentence, but it gave him something nearly as bad, life in prison. Nelson Mandela was sent to a small, cold island called Robben Island. It was far from his family, his people, and his dream of freedom. But this was not the end of his fight. It was only a new beginning. In 1964, Nelson Mandela arrived at Robben Island, a cold, lonely place surrounded by the sea. The prison was old and harsh. The guards were cruel. The food was terrible. Mandela was forced to do hard labor, crushing stones under the hot sun. His cell was very small, just a hard floor to sleep on, a thin blanket, and a small bucket. There were no beds, no books, no newspapers, and no visitors for the first few years. But Mandela did not give up. That he said, I was a prisoner, but I was still free inside. At first, the guards tried to break him. They insulted him. They gave him less food. They treated him worse than others. But Mandela stayed calm and respectful. Slowly, even the guards began to respect him. Mandela used every chance to grow stronger. He exercised, studied, and taught other prisoners. He believed education was the key to freedom. He even studied law by mail and got his degree while in prison. Other ANC leaders were also on Robben Island. Together, they made rules. They helped each other stay strong. They called their prison time the University of Robben Island because they learned so much about leadership, discipline, and hope. Mandela also found peace in simple things. He planted a garden in the prison yard. He said taking care of a plant was like taking care of a dream. It needed patience, love, and time. But outside the prison, the world was changing. The apartheid government thought people would forget about Mandela. But they were wrong. People all over the world began to speak his name. In the 1970s and 1980s, more and more people in South Africa and other countries protested against apartheid. They said, "Free Nelson Mandela." Musicians wrote songs about him. Countries refused to trade with South Africa. Sports teams refused to play there. Mandela, a man locked in a cell, had become a global symbol of freedom. Back in prison, Mandela was moved from Robben Island to Pollsmoor Prison in 1982 and later to Victor Verster Prison. These prisons were not as harsh. He was older now, with gray hair and slower steps. But his mind was still sharp. The government knew it had a problem. The world was watching. The protests were growing. South Africa was in crisis. So they came to Mandela and said, "We will let you go if you stop fighting for the ANC." Mandela refused. He said, "Only free men can negotiate. A prisoner cannot enter into contracts." He would not trade his freedom for silence. Finally, after 27 years in prison, the world heard amazing news. On February 11th, 1990, Nelson Mandela was released. Millions of people watched him walk out of the gates, hand in hand with his wife, Winnie. He raised his fist in the air. He smiled. He was free, but he had not forgotten his mission. Mandela said, "I stand here before you not as a prophet, but as a humble servant of you, the people." He had spent more than a quarter of a century in a cell, but his spirit was never broken. And now, he was ready to lead his people into a new future. After 27 years in prison, Nelson Mandela was free. The people were happy. They danced and sang. But the country was still in trouble. Apartheid was not over yet. Black and white people were still not equal. There was anger and fear. Some people wanted revenge. But Mandela chose peace. He said, "Let us build a future together." Mandela became the leader of the ANC. He started talking to the white government. The president at that time was F.W. de Klerk. Together, they worked to end apartheid. There was violence in the streets. Some people tried to stop change. But Mandela stayed calm. He believed in forgiveness and unity. In 1993, Mandela and de Klerk won the Nobel Peace Prize. 1 year later, in 1994, South Africa had its first free election. Everyone could vote, black and white. Millions of people stood in line to vote. For many, it was their first time. Mandela won the election. He became the first black president of South Africa. The same man who spent years in jail was now leading the country. As president, Mandela wanted to unite the people. He used sports to bring black and white South Africans together. In 1995, South Africa won the Rugby World Cup. Mandela wore the team's jersey and gave the trophy to the captain. That moment showed the world that the country was changing. Mandela also helped improve schools and hospitals. He worked for peace and fairness. He started the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. People could tell the truth about past crimes. It helped the country heal. In 1999, Mandela left office after one term. He showed that true leaders share power and respect democracy. Even after leaving office, Mandela kept working. He spoke about peace, health, and human rights around the world. Nelson Mandela changed the world, not with anger, but with hope. He showed that peace is stronger than war, and love is stronger than hate. After he left office in 1999, Mandela continued to work for good. He created the Nelson Mandela Foundation to help poor people, children, and those with AIDS. He traveled to many countries and spoke about peace and human rights. People around the world loved and respected him. He was called Madiba, a name of honor in his tribe. He became a symbol of freedom and courage. In his old age, Mandela became weaker. He spent more time at home with his family. On December 5, 2013, Nelson Mandela died at the age of 95. The world cried. People everywhere said goodbye to a great leader. But Mandela's dream did not die. His words, his actions, and his smile are still alive. He once said, "I have walked that long road to freedom. I have taken a moment to rest, but I can only rest for a moment. Freedom is still a journey. Nelson Mandela taught us many lessons. Forgive, even when it is hard. Stand up for what is right. Fight with peace, not with hate. Lead with love and respect. Mandela's life is a light for the whole world. Now it's your turn. What did you learn from Mandela's story? Do you believe one person can change the world? If this story inspired you, please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Let's keep learning, growing, and building a better future together.